he sat down with the president of a university, and the president said, okay, what are your top 2 priorities for this university right now? And he said, getting our finances in order and improving our marketing. He's like, without those 2 things, we have nothing.
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch, we'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Or find me on LinkedIn, the link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. As we round up our look at the extended marketing mix, the 7 Ps, it seems fitting that this week we talk to a marketing consultant and professor. Let's meet Krista Fabrick. Krista teaches marketing and social networking through both the theoretical side and the more practical elements, utilising the many social platforms in what she teaches. Genius. This also transfers onto startups and small businesses who simply haven't the time to sit down, learn, develop and implement marketing strategies that Krista can help them with. Not only that, but Krista is also pursuing a doctorate in business administration and marketing with a specific view on social. More on that later. Now I have to give you a little pre-warning here that the audio isn't fantastic on this episode, but bear with me. Try our best to keep it together, but every now and again it might cut out. But please, please, please listen, because Krista provides so much value in this episode. Anyway, first things first. Being a professor, I wanted to know, Krista, what is the worst thing you ever did at school?
Okay, so I will say I double-checked with one of my best friends from college. We had the same major. And so I asked her if I had one that was worse than this one. And she said, no, this was probably it's not bad, but it's definitely funny. So we were in a humanities class, and it was, we went to a university with small class sizes, except for this. So this was in a dark auditorium with about, 200 students. And the professor mostly just put a bunch of art slides up on the screen, on the projector with music, and and most people would sleep. And so my friend and I, we got to know the professor. We thought she was lovely and we liked her, so we would always sit in the front row. But one day we were feeling kind of silly and kind of bored and tired, and we were worried we weren't going to stay awake. So we went to the convenience store on campus, got Pop Rocks and Cherry Coke. And we were putting Pop Rocks on our tongue and pouring the Coke and making the popping and giggling in the front row of the auditorium while she was doing her lecture.
Brilliant.
So, but she giggled. She actually thought we were funny. She was like, now, girls. At one point, she was like, let's settle down, girls.
Worthwhile education, then.
Yeah.
which is really interesting, because it brings us beautifully on to what's brought you to this stage of your career as marketing consultant, speaker, and professor.
Yes, that's funny that, yeah. Well, so my undergraduate degree was actually in international management. And I had in high school and early in college, had the dream of working for the Department of State, actually, in the U.S. Then I realized I did not want to live on the East Coast. And so, but I loved the business classes. I just loved, I took some communications and political science classes. I loved all of that kind of stuff. But didn't really quite know where to start. And I knew I grew up with my parents are from Finland, actually. So I grew up with English as my second language. I grew up traveling a ton all around Europe. And so I knew I wanted to do something international, but I wasn't sure. So then I graduating, I have all the student loans. I ended up getting a job in sales for a fairly large Fortune 500 company, and was quite good at sales, really enjoy a lot of sales. but I knew it wasn't my forever thing. And so I ended up finding kind of working with marketing, which is why I love what Vicky talks about, right? Marketing and sales. I ended up working with marketing a lot to do my job. And I was like, hey, I kind of like this. And so eventually got the opportunity from a coworker's wife to interview. She was starting her own marketing agency, interview with her. And she just brought me in as a marketing company. I was her first full-time hire. And I just learned the ropes, got, thrown into the fire and had to learn just everything. I started with direct marketing, mostly like direct mail and doing TV commercials and radio commercials and things like that. But 2003, I started marketing.
Brilliant. So not pre-internet really, but it's vastly different.
Pre-social media for sure. And websites were very, very rare still then. Yes.
I had to explain to somebody what a dial-up network was a couple of months ago, which it made me feel really old. And we're getting to that stage where you have to start explaining what old things are.
Yes, exactly. So that was how I got started marketing. Fell in love with it from the beginning, and have never looked back. And then somewhere along the way, I tutored in high school. I set up the training programs for everybody that came into this marketing agency I worked at. I was a trainer when I worked in restaurants as a server. So I've always liked teaching people. And so somewhere I got this dream of, hey, I'd like to teach college someday. And I did get my MBA. I got my master's in business administration. And so one day I just started applying. And so about, 2015? So 4.5 years ago, I got the opportunity to teach my very first Principles of Marketing class, which is still my favorite class to teach, by the way. I've taught it 6 times and we'll be teaching it again this fall. And same thing, just like with marketing, about first day in the classroom, I was like, yes, this is my thing. This is my calling right here. So,
love it. I think you're the perfect person, because we've never really broken this down in any way, shape or form on this podcast, but how important is marketing?
Oh my goodness. Marketing is critical, right? Without marketing, nobody knows who you are and what you're doing. And so it's the way that you can communicate to the world about your brand, your product, your service, how you can help them. One of my favorite stories about this is actually the CFO, so the Chief Financial Officer of the university I previously worked at. He sat down with the president of a university, and the president said, okay, what are your top 2 priorities for this university right now? And he said, getting our finances in order and improving our marketing. He's like, without those 2 things, we have nothing. And the president said, yeah, but what about academics? He's like, without marketing and finance, you don't have students to give academics to. So that's how important marketing is, I think.
I love that. Great story as well. It's if only everybody walking into a business had that mindset, it would be happy days.
Because you need the money to make things run, but you need the marketing to get the money to make things run.
Absolutely, yeah. Finance and marketing, two best friends.
Yes.
What are some myths or preconceptions about marketing that can put people off?
Two of my pet peeves about misconceptions are that marketing is just sales. Right? A lot of people just think, oh yeah, if you're selling, you're marketing. No. And the other one is that marketing is just advertising. And that's also not true. Those are 2 very critical parts of marketing, but they are not what only things that marketing are. And I feel like a lot of people, because they think those things, they're, oh, I'm not interested in marketing, or I don't really care about marketing, so I don't like sales, or I don't like advertising. And so I think that's 2 of the things. The other one is, I think a lot of people still think marketers are just always trying to convince you that you need something you don't need. And that's not really true. Marketing is about communicating the value that you can provide to somebody.
Absolutely.
And about telling a story. But
100%. It's interesting that you picked up on those two things, sales and advertising, simply because when I'm explaining it to people, I always say that that's the tip of the iceberg. So it's the bit that people relate to the most. So they feel they know and understand it, because you're always advertised to throughout your whole day, regardless of where you are or what you're doing. And the sales part, well, everybody knows sales because we purchase things. So it's like the 2 things that we know most about.
Yep. Yeah.
I want to go deeper into what you're currently doing, which is you're in the process of your doctorate, which focuses on social, which is interesting to say the least. What are the benefits of studying marketing as you're doing, and you're a professor as well, teaching people how to study? And tell us a bit more about your research.
Yeah, so the program I'm in is a little bit different than probably most doctoral programs are in Europe, from what I know. So I'm actually finishing up my coursework right now. So I'll be done in August with my coursework. So I have to do my coursework first, and then I'll move into my dissertation, which actually is going to be more in European style. It's going to be action research based. So it's not a traditional PhD dissertation as we know here in the States. So thus far, because it's a doctorate of business administration with a specialization in marketing, I've had a broad array of courses. So my research thus far has been all over the place. But starting in August, when I start my dissertation, it will be very heavily focused on social media. In fact, that's my dissertation will be around the use of social media for the world of academia, actually.
Okay.
For universities and how they can use it to engage, recruit, enroll, retain, and engage non-traditional students. That's what I'm looking at for smaller universities. So the benefits there are, although social media changes every single day, it has been around long enough now that there's a history that we need to understand. There are foundations and principles, just like with your traditional marketing, that we need to understand. And there are still strategies and frameworks that can apply no matter what.
Wow, whole host of things there to consider. That sounds so interesting. You'll have to come back on when you've done your dissertation to talk about what the actual results were and how we can take that forward. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm going to get to interview a lot of people in my research, so I'm excited for that part.
That's brilliant. Okay, staying with social, one of your posts recently discussed the 3 daily must-dos for success: content, post, engage.
Yes.
What's this strategy all about then?
So I think one of the biggest, as you probably have seen, is one of the biggest issues people have on social media if they're trying to build a personal brand or do branding for a company. It does not matter the platform. You have to be consistent. And so one of the ways I believe people can be consistent is doing things daily, right? And that's been proven. And so I think, especially for people starting out, if they can make a daily habit of creating content, whether that's writing one caption for next week, even, spending 5 minutes writing a caption, or getting on and posting a story to their Instagram or Facebook, or, whatever it is, or writing a quick blog post, but creating some sort of content every single day, if they can even spend 5 minutes, that will make sure that they always have content to share on their social media. And then posting every single day. Same thing. If you're used to, every single day at 12 o'clock on my lunch break, if they have a regular job or whatever, I'm going to get on Instagram and I'm going to post a story, or I'm going to post something to the feed. Once again, it becomes a habit and it becomes easier. They become more efficient at it. So the more they do it, the more comfortable they are, the better they are, the more efficient they are, which means they're most likely to continue doing it. And then the most important part is engaging every day, because if you're not engaging with your audience, then you're not going to get real far on your social media. So that's why I think those 3 things are key, because you have to have consistency. And in order to have consistency, you have to have content, and you have to post to put out that content, and then you have to engage to build that community, build those relationships.
I think people might have to rewind that last 30 seconds to a minute a few times and just listen to it over and over and over again, and then boom, they've got their strategy sorted. A lot of people listening will be hopefully studying marketing, but there's also a practical side that's sometimes lost when studying, which I find it's massively important, and I try and integrate it into all my teachings, the practical applications. Any tips for students to do this themselves?
Yeah, so what I've done in every single marketing class I've ever taught is I try to make it as practical as possible. Yes, let's learn the theory, but how can we practice it in the real world? So if I can't get them to actually work with a live client, which I've done many times, I have them, for example, like with a social media marketing class, they have to do a project where they evaluate current brands and their social status. So go out and pick 3 brands in one industry. look at each of those three brands on, what platforms they're on, what are they doing, how many likes are they getting over a week, and actually have to track the likes, the comments, the shares, etc. And evaluating and analyzing what are real brands doing. Doing mock posts for those real brands. Pretend like you are on the social media team for, Coca-Cola, and you're doing this campaign. What's the actual picture would use? Write the caption, write the hashtags. Just because you don't have a live client to deal with or you don't have a live job yet doesn't mean you can't practice with real brands. So once again, I feel like that seems oversimplified, but I know there are a lot of marketing classes that don't do that. They just have you memorizing theory and maybe writing a paper on that theory and doing some research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you go out into the real world and you realize, oh, okay, I need to actually apply these things that I've learned and can't actually apply them yet.
Yes. Yeah. And, and that's the other thing too, is I usually have a component of my classes where they have to do it for themselves, their own component, and here's the criteria and whatever, just to practice. Because even though company marketing and personal marketing are different, the principles are the same.
Yes.
So.
Absolutely. Okay. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Yes.
Okay. Name one must-read business book.
Okay, so there are a lot of books, but I feel like every single person can benefit from this book, and it is Known by Mark Schaefer, because he does such a brilliant job of explaining why everybody can benefit from building a personal brand, even if your audience is 25 people. And he gives such a clear and practical formula for doing that, for how to build your personal brand.
Yeah, just read Marketing Rebellion as well. Superb.
I have not gotten to that yet, and I'm dying to read that.
What was the last thing you Googled?
Actually, I have to think about that. I think I just Googled something about, we're teaching, my business partner and I are teaching a video on the art of social media video tomorrow. And I just Googled something about the video requirements for Instagram, because I couldn't remember if it was 59 seconds or 1 minute for the feed.
Okay, cool. Very professor-like. What is your most used app at the moment?
Instagram, definitely. That's my screen time. Always shows me I use Instagram the most.
What is your favorite theory, concept, or methodology?
So this was a tough one, because since I am a teacher and a doctoral student, there's a lot that I've learned and that I'm always writing about or teaching about. But my business partner, actually, that I was just with, she was in the first class I ever taught, and that's how we connected originally. And I was talking to her about this question, and she's like, Krista, smart goals. That's like you pound it into everybody's head.
Yeah.
So I was like, you're right, it is, because it applies to personal goals, to marketing, to business, to anything you're doing. So, I'm sure you're familiar with SMART, the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based goals. So I think that's probably one of my favorites for sure.
Okay, brilliant. This will be an interesting one. What would be your one tip for people who are studying at the moment?
Yes, this is a hard one too, since I obviously, as a professor myself, I'm always trying to help my students do better. But, it's just to remember your goal. What's your end goal with studying, right? So, for example, your audience is a lot of people who are studying for those certificates. So what are they going to achieve once they get that certificate? That's going to help them get that job that they want, right? And so if you can keep in mind what is the big goal, that's going to give you the motivation to get through today. Just like for me, as a student myself right now, some of these classes I've been in, they've been really, really boring, and I have not wanted to do the work. Like, there's some topics I could care less about, like accounting, I don't care about accounting, but I know my end goal is to get to this dissertation that I am so excited to start on and to receive my degree, which will continue my career. And so remembering what your overall goal can really just help give clarity to why you're doing what you're doing in the moment right now, and give you that motivation you need to get through it.
Final question, most important question. If people want to find out more about your services or get in touch with you, where should they go?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn, absolutely. Find me, Krista Fabrick. My profile is public. And then from my Instagram, I'm very active there every single day, and I always have links out to and updates on everything I'm doing. And my Instagram handle is just Krista Fabrick, my first name and last name.
Krista, it's been fantastic chatting to you with all things marketing, professor-like, marketing consultancy, speaker, etc., etc. It's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, this has been so much fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Krista, thank you so much for joining us this week. And to everyone listening, apologies for the sound quality. But I just want to touch upon some things that Krista mentioned there as my takeaways here. As we heard last week with our guest Mark Shaw, you need to understand the platforms to use them correctly when we're talking about social. Krista takes this one step further with the premise that you need to understand the history, the principles, the strategies, the frameworks, and the foundation of each platform to gain that also important competitive advantage when using them. Without this knowledge, you are starting right at the bottom with a long way to go. The second takeaway is consistency, consistency, consistency. Can't say it enough. Consistency. I've had enough of that. Showing up regularly and getting into the habit of this being part of your daily life is integral. Yes, there are other comms channels we need to consider, but they're just the same. We utilise in the same way. We all need consistency in what we do, which leads nicely onto the final takeaway. Learn the theory and practice this in the real world. It's what good marketing is all about. Many don't want to do the theory and go straight into the practical, which can work, but in my opinion, it takes twice as long, and not documenting your progress can start to make your decisions based on intuition alone. Not a good long-term strategy. And we round off this week's episode with our final top tip, the 7 Ps Roundup. I just wanted to wrap up our look at the 7 Ps, the extended marketing mix, and why it's important you always consider every single element. They are all linked together, and if you change one element, it will have an effect on the others, and that's the importance of the 7 Ps. Let's take a look at an example of how this would work in practice. So let's start with price. And you increase the price of a service dramatically because things have changed. This will have an effect on the people, as your customers will expect a higher level of service for this higher price. Your physical evidence will probably have to be updated to highlight the additional quality you now include. And your promotional material will need to mirror the change in both physical evidence and the pricing structure. And this is the complexity of the marketing mix and why it should never be placed in the background. It should be front and centre in your tactical marketing approach, always. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.